So we're going to get going. Thank you all for being here. I am Lisa Herrick. For those of you who have not been to one of our events, I founded 31st Street in 2017 with 30 people in my living room on 31st Street in Washington, D.C. We weren't very clever with our name, but it's stuck. We are a chapter of the national group Swing Left, although we are completely autonomous at this point. Our aims certainly overlap with Swing Left, but we really function as an autonomous grassroots group. Tonight, we have a number of speakers. We're very grateful for Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton to join us as a guest speaker. And then later on in the program, we will hear from Michael Feggins and Russet Perry, two of the candidates who are running. The primary is over, so they are running and they will be on the ballot in November. I'm not going to say too much other than the fact that 31st Street cut our teeth on Virginia. In 2017, there's a legislative election in Virginia on the off years, and we were gearing up and learning how to be a functional grassroots group in the hope of getting people elected in 2018 to the House. And we really were learning as we went, and we learned on Virginia. And it was a thrilling ride. We worked alongside many other grassroots groups, which was exciting in itself, just to feel how many people in America were activated by the election of Trump. And then to feel how successful it was that these young candidates were running for the legislature, teachers and firefighters and people who had never been in politics. And we met them and we canvassed for them and we learned how to raise money for them. And so many of them won, and we just missed the majority in 2017. And of course, we won the majority in 2019, which was also thrilling. So 31st Street has really held Virginia near and dear to its heart. Of course, many of us live in Virginia or DC or Maryland, and so it's close by, but really Virginia is an incredibly important state. You're going to hear a lot more from Jim Shelton, 31st Street analyst and strategist, about why Virginia and why this slate. But just speaking personally as somebody who started this group out of nothing with no idea whether it was going to survive a year, here we are with 1,500 members, and we've raised over $8 million in the time that we've functioned. And we've gotten to know so many inspiring candidates and grassroots groups. And we're just very, very grateful that we are going strong and we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here all the way through 2024 and beyond, because there is a ton to do. So thank you so much for coming. We're really happy that you were here. A few notes. Please put questions in the chat as we go along. We will be doing our best to sort of be curating questions. Our question and answer period is going to be at the end of our program. So we're going to let all of our speakers speak. We will be gathering questions in the chat, and we will do the question and answer toward the end. And some of us will stay on late if there are people still asking questions and wanting to talk to us beyond 8 p.m. We have a goal of $200,000 to raise for our slate of candidates, and we're almost halfway there, actually. We've been hard at work already, and our contributors have been hard at work. So we're almost halfway there, which is amazing, but we really want a great showing tonight. We are going to be putting the donation link in the chat throughout the program. It's very quick. 31st Street touches no money. We're all volunteer. All of the donations go directly to the candidates. They go directly to the campaigns through ActBlue. And if you've never used ActBlue, it's pretty simple, it's pretty quick. And so you can actually make a donation while you're listening to this program if you want to do that. I want to thank all of our co-hosts, and I think there is a co-host slide. Thank you very, very much, all of you, for stepping forward to be a co-host and inviting the people that you know to attend and contributing yourselves and attending this yourselves. We cannot function without co-hosts. it is really one of our foundational ways of fundraising for the candidates and grassroots groups that we support. So thank you very, very much for being a co-host. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Wexton, who is, as you know, a congresswoman. She has served in Virginia for over 2 decades. She was a prosecutor, child advocate, she was a state senator, and now she's in the House of Representatives. She does a lot of important things, but 2 of the most important things is she serves on the House Appropriations Committee and the House Budget Committee. So she has a lot of responsibility. She needs to get a lot done, and she's an incredibly effective congresswoman. So we're very, very grateful that she's taking the time to talk to us tonight. And I'm just going to hand it over to her now.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's great to see everybody today. Hi, guys. I'm Jennifer Wexton. I'm so happy to be here with you. It's great to see everybody. Hey, how's things? It's great to be here with you. You know, I want to thank 31st Street String Left for everything you've done to help me and so many other Virginia candidates here. Because in Virginia, we love democracy so much. We have elections every year, right? We have it in the off years. We have it in off years, and this is an off year. It's the lowest turnout of the 4-year cycle. So it's really, really important that we turn out the vote. Or to do that, we need money. Now, one of the things I love about 31st Street String Left is you guys don't just walk the walk. You don't just talk the talk. You walk the walk. I'm sorry. You don't just talk the talk. You walk the walk. I'm sorry. I have a condition which makes me talk really fast and really low. So I'm trying to really try and slow down. You don't just talk the talk. You walk the walk. There we go. That's better. But you guys actually follow through and you come and knock doors and things like that with us, which is so huge and it makes a big difference. But your money also helps a lot as well, because you know it's so expensive to run here in Virginia, especially because most of us are in the DC media market. I gotta tell you, we're so excited about Russet Perry as our new candidate. She's been described as the what would happen if Abigail Spanberger and I had a political baby. She would be Russet Perry. And it's so true because we get very strikingly similar backgrounds. I mean, Russet works in Leesburg in the courts there. She was a prosecutor in the same office I was a prosecutor in. She works in the same office I used to work in, and she was running for the seat that I used to hold in the state senate. She's gonna be my state senator, so I'm really, really vested in this. I need her to win. Absolutely, we need her to win. She's an amazing person. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why the stakes are so high in Virginia, then I'll tell you a little bit more about Russet. Stakes are so high in Virginia because every single seat in the General Assembly is up for re-election. That's 140 seats. And we have a real chance to keep the Senate, but with redistricting, they're all brand new. We have a lot of people who have left either left or retired. We lost a lot of good people, so we need to make sure that we re-elect really good ones. And everybody on the list here today is in a very tight race, so it's going to be really important that you guys help them out. And it's going to make a big difference. Your assistance will make a huge difference in their races. So this is, I know that you have a political analyst who will tell you more about exactly why it matters here in Virginia, but let me tell you a couple of things here, what I've seen from my experience here. In 2017, Virginia gave the whole country hope, you know. And after 2017, because of that hope, I think we ended up with 2018, the wonderful class of 2018, of which I'm a member. I want to thank Senator for helping getting me to Congress, but absolutely amazing what we managed to accomplish in those years there. Flipping the House of Representatives and just stopped untold damage from the Trump administration. It really did. Really important that we won. We were able to do some good things in the meantime as well. So, you know, and then because of you, we saw even better results in 2019. 2019, we flipped both houses of the General Assembly, and won. Since we had the governor's mansion, we were able to do great things in Virginia. We passed the Virginia Voting Rights Act. Virginia is the only southern state with its own Voting Rights Act. Really. That's why we have 45 days of actual early voting now here in Virginia. Whereas it was before, we were one of the stingiest when it came to early voting. We need to have an excuse, and there's absentee voting. You have an actual excuse, and you just sign a certification in order to be able to do it. Now we're one of the most generous when it comes to early voting, and it makes a big difference, more turnout. So it's really a huge deal. We also have to stop women's tax on women's health, women's rights, women's reproductive rights. We weren't able to go as far as we would have liked because we had some really people squishy on women's reproductive rights in the Senate, but most of them are gone now. We will win, and hopefully we will protect women's rights to abortion, because it's a huge deal. Our governor is Glenn Youngkin. He's running for president. He's running for president as a member of the far right. I mean, he definitely is. He does a good job of masquerading as a moderate, but he's not. Absolutely not a moderate. He went to win both of these races. with these houses of the General Assembly. He wanted to flip the Senate, and Senate was a brick wall for them in 2020, 2022, 2023. So we need to make sure that we hold the Senate and flip the House of Representatives, the House of Delegates. We got some really good candidates to make that happen. But it's gonna be really hard. So we need your help definitely to make it happen. We made so much progress in Virginia, but it could all be gone like that if we don't follow through and make sure we win all these races. Now, these candidates have done their part. They're all working their butts off. They definitely are fantastic candidates. We've got amazing people who are willing to step up to run, like Russet Perry. So Russet Perry, I was thinking back to when I first met Russet. I met Russet 18 years ago. 18 years ago, is that right, Russet? 18 years?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Loudon in 2006, I guess it was, right? Yeah, 2000, it's about 17 years ago we met. So Russet came to Loudon to work as a probation officer in the Loudon courts. And I was like, when I first met her, I was like, it seemed like the most incongruous thing. It made no sense to me. I was like, why? It's like when a beautiful swan comes and nests likes to nest in the drainage pond at a construction site, right? It made no sense to me. Like, why is this beautiful woman here? I don't understand it at all. I've been introduced myself one day. I was kind of curious about her. I didn't know what her deal was. I introduced myself, and a lot of people were actually intimidated by me, believe it or not. It's hard to believe, but a lot of people were. And so I said, hey, I'm Jennifer Wexton. What's your name? And she said, it's Russet. I was like, who? What? I was like, what's your name? She said, Russet, like the potato. I thought, well, that's funny. I was like, I like this woman. She's not intimidated. She doesn't appear to be intimidated by me. And B, she doesn't take herself too seriously. After that, I got to know her pretty well. You know, she developed a couple of years later. She did get a job in the same prosecutor's office where I had worked, and she was absolutely amazing. She went to law school at night while she was in school. She was also working at the probation officer. Really amazing work ethic, really strong work ethic, which she'll tell you about when she does her little talk. How she learned to be a very strong worker and everything. And then she worked as a prosecutor. And as a prosecutor, she was tough but fair, which is what you want as a prosecutor, right? And so she's an absolutely amazing prosecutor, really great lawyer, super smart. And then after that, she did leave for a little while to go to a certain three-letter agency in Langley, which we will not talk about anymore. But that's where Abigail Spanberger comes in, because she also worked for the same three-letter agency. After that, she did come back to Loudon. We're very pleased that she did come back to Loudon. And I was very pleased that she was willing to run for the Senate, because it was really hard to find people to run for this who were qualified, who would actually win. This is a true 50-50 seat right here in Loudoun County, anchored in Loudoun County. It also goes out into Fauquier and goes all the way into also in Fauquier County, which is kind of tough sledding, quite honestly. It's a very red county. There's some good parts of Loudoun County, but it's not the best parts of Loudoun. We have two seats in Loudoun. One is Russet's and the other one is John Bell's. John Bell's is true blue, absolutely blue as can be. Russet's is basically a 50-50 seat. The majority of the Senate will come down to Russet's seat. I'm very glad that you're helping her. I'm also glad you're helping Monty Mason. Monty Mason is going to be a tough race. He really is, and he's a fantastic candidate. Need him to win too. But anyway, so Russet then, she's an amazing candidate, but she's working incredibly hard in the primary. I've never seen anybody like her. She's an absolute beast when it comes to making calls, call time room all the time. I'm sure a lot of you have gotten, probably burn up your phones all the time for this. But she's working very hard. And since she won the primary by very handily, what was it, 2-1? It was 70% of the vote or something like that. 69% of the vote, something like that. She won the primary 2-1, which is good against a popular member of the town council here in Leesburg. You know, she's been working her butt off to make sure that she has the resources she needs to communicate, because she did have to spend a bunch of money in the primary. She's an amazing candidate. Please help her. Here she is, my former colleague and my future state senator, Russet Perry.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for just speaking with us. And we are all looking forward to hearing more from these candidates a little bit later.
Before I let her speak, I want to close with one more thing. So thank you guys so much for helping us here in Virginia this year. It's the lowest turnout year of the 4-year cycle, as I used to say. As I said, in 2019, we had a whole bunch of people turn out, but usually turnout for this race is only about 27%. So it's really important that we turn out everybody we can. Because if we get 27%, we lose both houses of General Assembly. We cannot let that happen. Well, thank you guys so much for coming, and it's great seeing everybody. And take care. Also, I'm just gonna say one more thing, which is that Kevin McCarthy is a completely untrustworthy weasel. We need him to be a one-term speaker. So thank you.
We will do our best, and thank you so much for serving.
My pleasure.
And now we are turning to Jim Shelton.
Right. So, yeah, I'm Jim Shelton. Most of you, I think, do know me, but a few of you may not. So I'm the political analyst for 31st Street, retired epidemiologist. And I do have a lot of strategic kind of things to talk about to lay a foundation for our great candidates who are going to be speaking next. So I'm going to share my screen and bring up the slides again. Okay, so, and for those of you who maybe don't know us, I do want to take the opportunity just to say a little bit about us, the way we go about what we do, and hopefully that will be helpful to understand our approach to Virginia. We look hard for very strategic opportunities, and we do a lot of that by sort of looking for things that other people are not necessarily doing or not doing the same way. Zig when others are zagging, we call it. We're highly focused just on a few states and typically on just a few things, particularly raising money and canvassing, which will be very useful for Virginia. We're evidence driven, a lot of different kinds of evidence, as I'll talk about, and we drill down with due diligence for what we recommend and what we recommend that you invest in as we invest in the same things. We like to think of ourselves as nimble. We will change when the evidence changes. And that's particularly true with respect to the election cycle. Over the course of time, a lot of things will unfold, polling, funding, and so forth, and we expect to change. But right now, we're just starting out in Virginia. And to build on what Lisa said, this is now round 7 for us in Virginia. And I know some of you have been with us the whole time, but it is kind of our backyard. And I think we know it reasonably well, and we spend a lot of time to understand it. Again, building on one of the things that the Congresswoman was saying is that Youngkin is actually dangerous. And I'm going to lay out a few of the reasons why for what he's already done. And we do have this very precarious situation that a swing of only 2 Senate seats could give us a Republican trifecta. And as some of us say, might turn Virginia into Texas or Florida or something. So here's what some of the things he did. He defended Trump recently and very actively during his recent indictment for the security violations. He's called for abortion restrictions. He would sign any bill, he says. And of course, recall that Virginia is the only southern state now that has not had fairly significant abortion restrictions. He's rolled back voting rights restoration for people, felons who've paid their debts to society. He's been very divisive over race, including the critical race theory, poses any kind of gun safety. He's done a lot of extremist appointments to one thing and another. And for those of us interested in climate change, he's removed Virginia from something called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. And these are just the things that are just kind of, there are other things as well. So he's a real piece of work, if you will. All right. Now, what we're really about is to talk about our candidates. And we're going to hear, of course, from Russet Perry and from Mike Feggins. But it also happens that a couple of the other candidates are on the call too. It turns out Travis Nemhart and Kim Adams. So we welcome them as well. So we focused on these 10 candidates. Now, why is that? Well, here's the situation. There's 100 House seats and there's 40 Senate seats. They're all up, for election. Turns out, at least the way we do the estimation, there are only 6 toss-up House seats and only 2 toss-up Senate seats. Now, there's a little bit around the edges and so forth, but that's why we're really focusing on these candidates. By our calculus, we need to win, if we win all the lean Ds and solid Ds, we need to win 3 of these 8 House races to tie and 4 to actually have the majority. So we've got 6 that are toss-ups and 2 that are just barely on the edge, kind of on the red side. And then on the Senate side, there are really only 2 toss-ups. in my view, and we've got them here. And these are the people that they're going to, the decision is going to be made on those two. And I can tell you that we do our homework. We look at the historical data. We look at, talk to the candidates. We talk to campaign managers. We talk to key informants. We even talk to voters when we're out in the field. And we really do our homework. And I can tell you, this is a great set of candidates. They are motivated. They are energized. They want to serve their communities. They want to serve the state. And if you talk to any one of them, you'll see how that comes across, and you'll hear a couple of them in a moment. But before we get to that, again, just to kind of drill down a bit on what the playing field is. You know, you say, what? There's only 6 toss-up races in the House and only 2 in the Senate? Well, it's the geography. And this is a nice graph that shows, you know, the solid blue districts that Biden and McAuliffe won, the solid red ones. And then there's 11. These are House districts now. These are not the Senate. This is just the House districts where Biden won, but Youngkin also won. And if you look at these, here's DC. This is the exurbs. Exurb is the name of the game, and a little bit of rural as well. Same thing around Richmond. It's mostly kind of exurbia. And then, of course, we have Hampton Roads area, Tidewater, that is somewhat the same thing. So if you'll notice that there are 11 that were, and this is giving you part of our thinking. You know, a lot goes into this decision making, but just to give you a sense of part of the thinking of how this works, is that these arrows represent the 8 House districts, 7 of which are these light blue districts, 1 of which is kind of a marginal, slightly blue district. But that gives you a sense. It also gives you a sense of where these districts are. And then also for the Senate, here's Russet Perry's district. Now this is just the House district. Her district is 2.5 sizes large. And then we have Monty Mason district down here, which is kind of a mixed district. So I just wanted to give people a sense of where these races are, but also the fairly detailed thinking that we do. And we're out to win. There are candidates that we love that are not on this list, and we want them to win. But we want to win the whole shebang. That's more important than these other candidates. All right, and last thing is we're getting in here very early. So the primary was just on a week ago. And the first filing since the primary is on Friday in terms of financial reports. And we're doing this on purpose because we know early money is really important to campaigns. Why? Because it allows them to plan. It allows them to staff up and do other kinds of preparation, renting, buying things. It allows for early action. And I am a firm believer that the first mover effect, to some extent, it really helps to be out there and doing things early, not just yourself, but to have other things like mail and digital and so forth. Here's another thing, of course, which is unfortunate about our system, which is it's all about raising money for the most part in many ways. And again, unfortunately, one of the few ways externally that people have to judge as to how good a candidate is how much money they raised. So you have this situation that money begets money. So the more we can show that they've got money, and the more they can show on their June 30th report that they've got money, the more other people will be contracted and think that they can do a good job. But then lastly, and this is probably even more important, I would say it is, which is that these poor candidates, they work hard, but they're also like slaves to their telephones. They have to spend hours almost every evening calling up people like you and me trying to raise money. And the fact is that, in my view, especially in legislature races, the very best thing that most effective weapon is the candidate, him or herself, to get out and do canvassing. So we really want to give them money. And by the way, everyone I've talked to, they say they love canvassing. They love doing it. And so what we really want to do is free them up and allow them to do that as well. Okay, so that's the end of sort of my general pitch. I will again just say our two great speakers are Mike Fegans and Russet Perry. They're both very well ensconced and in their communities. They really want to serve their communities. They're well known in their communities, and I think they're going to do a great job. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike. Mike,
Hey,
I know-
y'all.
there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, and definitely thank you for providing that information on why early money is so important for all the candidates here. And so I'm Michael Fegans. I'm the Democratic nominee for House District 97 here in Virginia Beach. House District 97 is entirely within Virginia Beach, and so if you just saw the map that was just shown, that there was a sea of blue to the west, and there was a sea of red to the right of the 97th, and dead in the middle of the light blue of Virginia Beach is the House District 97th. It's actually an area that I grew up in, and so I'm originally from here. So I'm from Virginia Beach, and I'm a product of Virginia Beach Public Schools. So after graduating from Tallwood High School here in Virginia Beach, I entered into the Air Force. I signed up for the Air Force in 2001, right before September 11th. And then for the next 20 years, I had an incredible career serving in the Air Force Medical Service. I served everywhere from Oklahoma to Guam. I was able to serve as the aeromedical evacuation and IT specialist, taking care of patients that were in Afghanistan while deployed there in the country of Kyrgyzstan. I've also deployed and supported operations in South Korea. But during my time in the military, the military gives you a lot of great training, a lot of great resources. One of the reasons that I joined the Air Force and joined the military was to follow in my parents' footsteps. My father was in the Air Force, and my mother was a public school teacher, and met my father while he was stationed in Louisiana. And so I come from a family of service, and I'm able to now, when I finally decided to retire after 20 years in the Air Force, I knew that my best place to retire was back actually home where I grew up at here in Virginia Beach. And so I retired here, and I got back involved in the community that I love. I've served on the Virginia Beach Democratic Committee, and while I was actually in the Air Force, I had the opportunity to serve as a military intern for Senator Mark Warner. I was actually one of the first Air Force enlisted interns to serve for us in Congress for the Air Force, and then also served in Governor McCullough's administration as a cybersecurity intern. And so I'm taking all of those experiences from the military, from serving as a military fellow for Senator Warner and Governor McCullough's office, and then taking those experiences and seeing that we needed someone that was from this area, and not only that's from this area, that believes in the city and believes in the future. My opponent that I'm running against, unfortunately, believes in a Virginia Beach that's maybe in the past, and doesn't really trust the city to move forward. And so when we're looking at what's important, and when we're on the doors, what we're hearing on the doors is that we want someone to represent Virginia Beach that embraces the diversity of Virginia Beach, that understands that education is important, that supporting our educational support systems is important, that reproductive rights are key, and that and understands the importance of investing in a clean economy and environment. And so those are the areas that we're focused on. I'm so thankful that I was able to receive the Democratic nomination here, and I'm able to run with a great slate that's on this call. But we know what's at stake here. House District 97 has been identified as one of the top 3 races in the Commonwealth. When we are able to flip House District 97 and the other races, we know we have taken the House of Delegates back. And that's going to be so important to make sure that we have the agenda going forward. So we need to be able to take back the House. We know we need to take the Senate, keep the Senate, and I'm thankful to be here. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about our race, to present myself in this manner, and to make sure that we're able to flip this seat. I'll stand by for any questions, Jim.
Okay, we'll save the questions, but right now I guess we'll turn it over to Russet.
All right.
That's good.
Good evening to you all. My name is Russet Perry. As Congresswoman Wexton was so kind to say, I'm a former CIA officer, ex-prosecutor, mom, and Democrat running to flip the 31st state Senate seat up here in Loudoun and Fauquier counties. My background, I grew up the daughter of a public school teacher. My dad was a single income earning parent. My mom had gone back to school after suffering a bout with breast cancer. And so my dad made sure that the five of us had food on the table, but we didn't have a whole lot. But part of the reason we didn't have a whole lot is because my parents made sure that we lived in a place we really couldn't afford, but that had a great public school system. And so we struggled to get by, but I was the proud recipient of a wonderful public school education, and went up and graduated from school watching my parents, who were both public servants, much like Michael Fagan's parents. And I went on then to go to undergraduate and then law school at the Georgetown Law University Center up here in Washington, D.C. While I was there, I had the privilege of serving in the domestic violence clinic in DC Superior Court, representing indigent women, all women, it wasn't exclusive to them, but in my service it was, who were in desperate need of protective orders and legal counsel. Once I graduated from law school and passed the Virginia State Bar, I took a job continuing my work with domestic violence victims and survivors, and child abuse victims and survivors, and sex crimes as a prosecutor. And so that's how I come out of the same office as Jennifer Wexton. Although she's right, I met her. Again, I didn't have a lot of money, and so I worked, in the morning and went to law school at night. And that's how I came across Congresswoman Wexton long before she was in politics. So I continued my career of service. I was a prosecutor for about 10 years, prosecuting all manners of crime. About anything you can think of, I probably have prosecuted it, but I'm proud to say what Jennifer said, which I think I'm well known as being tough but fair. Which is one of the highest compliments you can get as a prosecutor. I also went and served over the Central Intelligence Agency, all told more than a decade of public service here to my community out here in Loudoun and Fauquier counties. And I think that really leads me to why I'm running. My background certainly is not in politics. But this race, I know, as Jim said, and as Congresswoman Wexton said, is a critical race this year. It couldn't be more important in this off election bellwether year, wherever all eyes are on Virginia to see what's going to happen. What is the tone and tempo of the country? And so I was approached back last fall. I'm in private practice as an attorney. I'll be honest with you, it's nice to be, spend more time with my family and things like that. But I was asked if I would be willing to step up and get back into public service and continue to serve. And so really the reasons that I'm running surround that, right? The things that are on the line here in this race, the things that are on the line here in this district, things like access to, reproductive health care, access to safe and legal abortion, where we don't have the stories that we see across the country with, doctors who can't take care of their patients, women who can't get the help that they need. As Jim said, Virginia is the last state in the South that doesn't have an abortion ban. That's one thing. Obviously, I prosecuted gun violence laws for gun laws for many years. I also taught red flag laws. So I have 2 children in public schools. And so keeping them safe, continuing to keep my community safe and fight for them. Obviously our environmental issues. And as I'm sure you all have known, because Loudoun County is routinely in the news, our public schools, which were critical to me as a child, and I'm not really willing to cast them aside for my kids. We have to fight for them. Our whole society depends on a good public school education, an educated populace. With all those things on the line, I stepped up to continue fighting for the people I've been fighting for my entire adult life. And so this race couldn't be more critical and more important to what happens this year, and to signaling to the country what's happening and what the values are here in Virginia. My opponent is the son of a billionaire, a Republican billionaire. He has literally dropped into this district, bought a house here about 7 days before the filing deadline, a true definition of a carpetbagger. He is heavily backed by Glenn Youngkin, who, as Jim laid out, hopes to essentially buy the seat and use it as his launch pad for the presidency of the United States of America. So my opponent is already up on broadcast television. Actually, prior to the primary I just won, he was up and will probably continue to be up through the remainder of the election, because there will be no expense spared by Republicans on this race to try to achieve that extreme Republican agenda. So that's what we're up against this year. But yet, as Jim said, we still think we can win. And why do we think that? A couple of things. One is the thing that that Congresswoman Wexton, referred to. Someone with my background has a history of turning out folks in a purple district like this is. That Spanberger, Congresswoman Wexton background that can help appeal to independents or even moderate Republicans, folks who care about public service. On top of that, Jennifer Wexton, she didn't say this, but she would have won my district by 6 points in the fall. So this district leans blue. It is winnable by a strong candidate, and I would argue is central to us winning and holding the majority, and is something that we can do. It will be a tough slugfest, but I didn't get here by taking the easy path or having things handed to me. This won't be either, but I couldn't be more grateful to each and every one of you for taking an interest in being educated and caring about what happens, not only in where you live, but where I live, and being willing to really go to the mat and fight for the seat. So thank you all so much for tonight, for caring about this area, this state, and our country more generally.
Thank you so much. Thank you both to Mike and Russet. We're gonna take questions in just a moment. So please, if you have any questions for either of these candidates, please put your questions in the chat. We're going to go to the questions very, very shortly. But first, I'm going to turn it over to my co-leader on 31st Street, Lynn Fletcher.
Hi, wow. First, I have to say, Russet and Mike, thank you. I am very moved. That was very inspiring. I am Lynn Fletcher. I'm a member of 31st Street, and George Hastings and I are the co-leaders of the Virginia team. And on behalf of my husband, Bob, and the other wonderful co-hosts tonight, I want to thank all of you for being here, for making time for this important work of democracy. Abraham Lincoln said, "Elections belong to the people. It's their decision. If they decide to turn their back on the fire and burn their behinds, then they will just have to sit on their blisters." Well, I feel like here in Virginia, and we've been here 40 years, we have had to sit on some pretty painful blisters since 2021. And no more. We're not going to sit by while Youngkin and the Republicans do all they can to turn Virginia into Florida or Texas, restricting abortion access, loosening gun safety laws, undermining voting rights, banning books, the MAGA wish list goes on and on. So I asked myself, as I was thinking about this, what is it that stands between Virginia and this MAGA fever dream? And I believe it's honorable people like Mike Feggins and Russet Perry and the other really dedicated candidates that are on our slate. Every single one of them, and you've heard some of their backgrounds, every one of them has stepped up. They are working their butts off, to quote Russet, to ensure that that dark future does not happen here in Virginia. Now, I know some of you do live in Virginia, but many of you don't. And you may be wondering why you should care about these Virginia legislative races. And what I want to tell you is, as you just heard before, what happens in Virginia matters in 2024. We can turn our backs to the fire and enter 2024 with a deflating MAGA trifecta, which is, in my opinion, more blisters on our behinds. Or we, right here, tonight, starting in Virginia, can help create the momentum for a 2024 blue wave. That's the choice we have, every single one of us. We have the opportunity to do our part to build that blue wave by reaching deep right now. As you heard Jim talk about, giving early in the campaigns packs the biggest punch. Some of these candidates on our slate have had primaries. They have very little money. Many of them need basics. They need yard signs, literature. They need to be able to do digital ads and video and introduce themselves to the public. Bob and I believe so strongly in the power of early money and the importance of this Virginia election that we've contributed $2,500 to the slate. Will you please join us? Whatever your capacity, please dig deep and give what you can. If you've already given, and I know some of you have given more than once, I'm going to ask the rest of you to consider stretching a little more and giving again. These candidates need our help. Honestly, they deserve our help. They're putting themselves out there, and we should have their backs. Our goal for this fundraising effort is $200,000. Let's crush it. We can start the blue wave right here, right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. That was wonderful and heartfelt. And I love the quote from Lincoln. That was perfect. We do have time now to take questions. I've been noticing in the chat, many people are contributing. Thank you so much. It's really wonderful. At some point before we end, Jim might have sort of a rough estimate of where we are with the contributions, but we'd like to give Mike and Russet any questions that you have. I saw one a little while ago from John, just asking, and we heard a little bit from Russet about this, but maybe Mike, are your opponents real MAGA opponents? Like, I guess there's a billionaire out there, but would you say that your opponents are far right opponents? Who exactly are you running against in terms of their policy stances? Mike, why don't you go first and then Russet?
Yeah, and so what I'll call my opponent likes to be a MAGA chameleon, and so it was just up until recently to where she, just to give a little context, and so I'm running against Delegate Karen Greenhall. Delegate Karen Greenhall won by less than 120 votes in 21 against my good friend Alex Askew. Thankfully, Alex Askew is going to be back in the House this year as he won his primary. He doesn't have a Republican opponent, and I actually worked on his campaign. Alex and myself actually went to the same high school together, Tallwood High School, And when I was retiring from the Air Force, I contacted him, and he actually gave me my first job out of the military. And so to work on his campaign and see him lose the race so close, because he was running against somebody who really didn't have a record. Well, now she has a record, and her record is extremely draconian. She is the architect of the anti-trans bill in Virginia, which was going to require all school children up into college to have their genitalia checked to play sports. And that's just one of the areas that she started with. Next, she is a huge proponent of pregnancy crisis centers, which hurt some of the most vulnerable patients at a time, and provide them misinformation. And then finally, just this week, she finally came out and stated that she is for a 15-week abortion ban and supports Governor Youngkin's agenda to restrict reproductive health in Virginia. And so when we're seeing what's at stake here, especially here in Virginia, that we can show that Virginia is going to be in terms of how Virginia is, it's in terms of having reproductive health protections for the South, because the rest of the South has already enacted reproductive health restrictions and abortion bans in various capacities. But we need to show the rest of the South, the rest of the country, that Virginia is not going to stand for that. That is going to ensure that reproductive health rights are available. And so my opponent, while she doesn't normally support the MAGA agenda per se, everything about her agenda and her policies are hurting everyone from children to some of the most vulnerable individuals in our Commonwealth.
Okay, well, we got to donate more to you. And any other information that you want to offer, Russet, about your opponent? And we do have some other questions as well.
Sure. What I'll say is my opponent is I think sort of maybe similar to Michael's. He is trying to attempt to run, right? This is a purple district, right? So to try to win the seat, he has to try to pretend to be a moderate. He has shied away from actually taking a position on abortion at all. I was talking to someone else about it today, but I think his silence speaks volumes. So what his goal, his job really is to try to run as moderate as possible to ensure Youngkin can win this seat, right? So then Youngkin can do whatever he needs to do. And on top of what Jim said tonight about what it is that Youngkin has said, right? I think there's a lot of what goes on in the Republican Party these days is we say one thing and then we go do another thing, right? Like Supreme Court justices interview for the Supreme Court justice, they go through confirmation hearings and they say, we won't roll back Roe. We won't roll back Roe, and then they get on the court and they do it anyway, right? And so my opponent is, I think, very similar in that way. He has one job, it's to win this race, Youngkin is going to have to, if he wants to beat out Trump, he's going to have to appeal to all of those MAGA folks. And so if he gets his trifecta here in Virginia, I believe that's what he will be doing. So I would suggest we are absolutely still running against the MAGA Republicans because that is, such a large section of the party. And if you want to be president of the United States as a Republican this day and age, that's who you have to appeal to. He has done other things that we've seen. My opponent has, like I said, he moved here at the end of October. And despite having no children in Loudoun County Public Schools, despite not ever darkening the door of a public school, except for perhaps to film his commercial, he is at every school board meeting, talking about schools. He has filed lawsuit against Loudoun County Public Schools already. So he is very much pursuing that Youngkin playbook that we saw back in 2021.
Great. So I'll ask the next question for Mike. So the Congresswoman mentioned that the expected turnout, I think she said it was something like 27%. And that we really need to turn out our people. And if we could do that we really think that would go a long way. I wonder what your thoughts are about how you might go about doing that, including, things like digital and mail, for example.
Yeah, and so when you're seeing, when you're running an election in a like I stated, in an off year, when you don't have the advantage of having a governor's race or a Senate race or a presidential race, For this year, it's it's our state senates and our House of Delegates. And so, when I'm on the phones and we're on the doors, a lot of it first has to start with education. It's educating voters, in terms of letting them know that, like, well, I don't normally vote, or I don't normally support during off-year elections. I really like to be involved in the congressionals. And so what I like to, tell them is, like, first, here in Virginia, Governor Youngkin is only going to be here for 4 years. But the wrong delegate can be in power for decades, and can affect your life for a lot longer than a governor's race. A president is only going to be here for 8 years, but the wrong senator can be here for 2 to 3 decades, depending on when they start. And so so we have to let voters know that their vote directly matters. Here in Virginia, when you look at Delegate Silly Simons and other races, when races are determined by 1 vote to less than 200 votes, every race really does matter. And then when we're talking about how to really get them energized, that's why we started our race, almost 14 months ago. And so we launched our campaign in April of last year. So as a first-time candidate, I knew it was going to take this amount of time plus more to make sure that voters knew about the campaign. And then a lot of it was leaning on, I want to make sure that every dollar that comes to our campaign is maximized to its best benefit. And so a lot of that, when Councilman Wexton talks about, TV is really expensive, especially in Hampton Roads, Richmond, Northern Virginia markets. It can be really expensive. But one of the best ways that we've been able to increase the name ID of the campaign, make sure that individuals know about the issues, has been with digital. I come from a digital background of understanding how to create ads, create our content. So while we'll be having a firm come on later in the fall to take care of our TV and some of our more advanced digital, everything we do is created in-house. Our ads, our TV, our digital ads, our graphics, and we've been, and then we've been utilizing that advantage to make sure that we get ahead of our opponent. You can go and look at Delegate Karen Greenhall's social media presence, and it's the pretty standard, advertisements or graphics that she hires a firm to do. But we make sure to make a lot of original content, a lot of me talking directly to the camera, making sure that our content is then boosted across Google, across all the Meta platforms, and we've seen an incredible amount of digital presence over the past 6 months of boosting our content. And since we've been boosting it ourselves, we haven't had to pay a firm. And so every dollar that you've been able that individuals have come into us goes a long way to make sure that individuals and voters know about how important this race is, and that their vote really does matter this fall.
Great. Okay, so I guess lastly for Russ, a little bit of sort of the same question, because John asked this actually. The issue of broadcast TV, which I can't imagine is very cost effective way out there in Loudoun and Fauquier County. But how do you look at your sort of mix of outreach to voters at this point?
Yeah, I mean, look, we are going to be outspent in this race, right? We just are. And so the question really comes down to, how are we going to spend our money? How can we most effectively spend our money to ensure we win and we're reaching the voters that we need to reach? And most importantly for us, that people are educated about what's on the table this year and that they need to get out and vote. And so, yeah, broadcast is incredibly expensive up here in that Northern Virginia market. And yes, to your point, it's so broad and covers, we're speaking to all of our friends on here from Maryland and DC and earning no votes in return for that. So we too are looking at, I have a digital firm on board. I've had it on board for some period of time. So we see digital as a huge component because we can target specific messages to specific groups. We can hit people on their podcast as they're going in, driving, commuting into DC, right? They have so many smart ways to target folks and to make sure we are talking to the people that we want to be talking to in a way that broadcast media really just can't do. That's one thing. I mean, I'm a firm believer though, also in just getting out there and knocking doors, right? in some ways, broadcast media is like a rich man's cheat on doing the work, right? And so, you can't beat that. Mail is a big part of our program as well. But like I said, you can't beat the work from getting out there in your tennis shoes and just talking to folks. And so I think those are going to be key and critical to this race this year.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like you guys are on it and determined, and we will do everything that we can to support your efforts. We are going to wind up our formal program now. 31st Street likes to be prompt, but some of us are going to stay on to continue taking questions or chatting with you. But we really appreciate your joining us tonight and all of your donations. It's really been terrific. And thank you to the candidates for taking the time to join us. Thank you for running. Thank you for trying to serve, and we wish you luck. So
Thank
good night,
y'all.
everybody.
Thank you all.
And we are at about 120,000 too. So thanks to everybody. That's very good progress.
That's amazing.
That's incredible.
So for anybody who wants to stay, again, you can put questions or comments in the chat. It can be, the goal is 200,000. So we're at 120 approximately. So we're getting there.